Hi, I'm Gary Alt, and I am, as promised, resurrecting the series of interview videos that we were accustomed to on about a weekly basis in one of the XJW groups that I'm an admin of on Facebook. And we started with Jonam Ross, about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And I wanted to continue with a series unto itself of interviews with authors, um, primarily post JW authors that are writing either autobiographically or in a novel based on a true story, or just a novel that's not based on a true story but is certainly based on facts about the organization and observations and actual events having something to do with that. And that's going to be the nature of our interview today, by the way. So they might be ex Jehovah's Witnesses, or they might be ex something else, some other high control group, or maybe even neither. It could be that we'll have the opportunity to interview people that have something to say that in some way is beneficial because of their expertise and their experience with members of or former members of such groups. So without any further ado, I want to tell you about who we're going to have on tonight. And first of all, I want to tell you that the names that we're going to use are not their real names. So the name of the author of the book, the one who is credited as the author of the book, is Eneeh Quarter. That's Eneeh, and then the word quarter, the English word quarter. But actually, there are two authors. So it was actually Baruq, and Eneeh was assisting him more or less. Well, she'll tell you about that as the interview goes on. But they prefer to remain anonymous, and so we're not going to use their images. We're going to be using computer-generated images for the most part throughout the interview. And the other thing I want to tell you is that because the book was originally published in French about 3 or 4 years ago, 3 years ago, I guess, but has been since translated into English, we are going to have the French subtitles throughout the video for the benefit of those people that speak Francais. So, without any further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Eneeh and Baruq. So, Eneeh and Baruq, bonjour et bienvenue.
Hello, Gary, and thank you for having us.
Hello, Gary. I am glad to be here with you.
Before we talk about your book, Remember Sydney, we do need to do a little bit of housekeeping. This interview is mainly being broadcast on a number of channels administered by and for people who had a past association with a high control group or groups, mainly religious ones, and primarily those who have been associated with Jehovah's Witnesses. So, briefly, what is your history with respect to Jehovah's Witnesses?
We were both brought up in a family of Jehovah's Witnesses. I was born in the 60s, and I waited till 2030 to start asking myself certain questions.
My story is more or less the same as Baruch's. A few years ago, Baruch shared me some material he'd found on the internet about the Watchtower. It had to do with the Society's secret affiliations with the United Nations. And that was the start of your collaboration.
Your book, Souviens-Toi, Sydney, was released in its original language, French, in March 2020, and has recently been translated into English with the title Remember Sydney. This is your first book, which actually surprised me because it exudes the maturity of a seasoned author. So tell me about that.
My father was a book salesman, and he used to give me children's books. We also had a well-stocked library, so I grew up surrounded by books, Victor Hugo, Émile Zola, and so many other classic writers. Then there was the poets, Verlaine, Rimbaud, and Lamartine, for example. I can say that I read several hundred of books during my teen years. I always wanted to write, and now, at 60, I finally grasped the opportunity.
So what was Baruch's idea that he wanted to develop?
Baruch had started writing a story in 2018, but he wasn't happy with it. He showed it to me, and I came up with the idea of transposing the story to the Jehovah's Witness milieu. We were in the middle of the period when the Australian Royal Commissions was taking place, during which the Watchtower failing in the management of child abuse cases were severely criticized. So the timing was perfect.
Some of our listeners might not be aware of the Australian Royal Commission, the full name being Australian Royal Commission into Institutional Responses to Child Sexual Abuse of 2013 to 2017. So please explain that and how it provided the spark for the main plot of Remember Sydney.
As I said, the original subject has nothing to do with it. Even after starting the story from scratch, we'll still add and settling on it. But as the writing progresses, the story took shape and it became clear that we had to talk about this subject. We were following what was happening in Australia closely, particularly the interview with the Korean body member Jackson, and we were horrified to hear him lie shamelessly about the handling of abuse cases. More than 1,000 cases of abuse of minors had been hidden by the Watchtower, and those were complained with rejected. But the congregations and the abusers sometimes simply moved to another region. The commissions also talked a lot about the place of women in the congregations. The Watchtower made it clear that this would never change, based on their own interpretations of some Bible verse.
So the book is a novel, therefore fictional and not autobiographical, but is it based on the experience of anyone in particular, perhaps your own?
Fortunately, I've never experienced this kind of abuse, at least not to the extent that we hear in various testimonies from member or ex-member of Jehovah's Witness. But leaving aside the fictional's life or Claire, the heroine of the story, nothing is invented about the way things are done in a congregation.
It's true that we've introduced certain elements from our own lives and even characters, but we can't say it's our personal story. But in my congregation, there was a mother and her daughter who came from another region. The father, an elder, had raped his own daughters since they were babies. The mother waited until her daughters were teenagers before reacting and leaving her husband. It's really absurd.
I've done a lot of research on the internet, and I've seen that the situation is much worse than we thought. Everything is being done in the organizations to hide what's going on from the proclaimer.
The story is quite suspenseful. The main gist of it is only revealed gradually, but done so artfully that I literally could not put it down once I decided to allocate sufficient time to read without interruption. But because of the iterative nature of its various revelations, I'm not sure what to ask without revealing anything I shouldn't. So perhaps you can tell us in your own way what the book is basically about.
Claire is a young woman brought up in a very religious family. She devoted herself entirely to her faith. She marries Jeremy, also a Jehovah's Witness. But things take an unexpected turn. In particular, events from the past that she had forgotten resurface. Two tragic events lead her to question his belief and the sincerity of those around her. She embarks on a journey that will gradually lead her to reflect on what she has always considered to be the truth.
As a former JW and one-time elder, I can truthfully say that the control the religion has on its members, and especially the control exerted by the elders and the governing body, are depicted very accurately in your book. The story is completely believable in every way. Is that due to personal experience and knowledge, or did you have to research some things?
I never wanted to have so-called privileges in the congregation, but I was a pioneer for 5 years. I do not regret that period of my life that was rich in experience. As I only preached during the week, I had practically only women for company. And I'm the type of person who lets people talk without contradicting them. So they appreciated that and told me about their lives, even elders' wives. And I thought to myself, why this one is talking to me, a guy who is barely 25 or so, about her problems, and why does she not talk to her husband? So I understood what it was like to be a woman in the Jehovah's Witnesses organization. Unfortunately, this organization, although it claims that women have the same place as men, encourages men to develop a feeling of superiority towards their female counterparts. Some accept this, but for others it is difficult to bear, especially after years of marriage, for example. For Jehovah's Witnesses, a woman can only be a good wife, if possible at home, married at least to a ministerial servant, and busy preaching during the week, saying that seems that she has nothing else to do, right? Then there are all those sisters who can't find a husband because there are about 6 or 7 women for every man in each congregation, and they're told to find a brother with a good reputation, at the very least, a ministerial servant, and they can't look outside the Jehovah's Witnesses organization. As a result, they are encouraged to undertake a pioneer service because not having a family to support, they don't need to work full time, and then Jehovah will bless them by perhaps giving them a husband later on. If Jehovah should delay, they will have a husband in the new world. All this means that I was able to transpose many of the characteristics and experiences of these sisters to Claire.
So, a very mature, complex subject is related from the viewpoint of a young girl, sort of reminiscent of Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird. Along with that comes a certain loss of innocence on the part of Claire. Claire's husband, Jehovah, who is appointed to the position of elder at one point, in some ways manifests problematic thinking and attitudes that are typical of JWs, especially those in positions of authority. For example, Claire's sad experience of nearly being raped by a vagrant and Jeremy's reaction.
This is the result of his upbringing, like that of most young men who are Jehovah's Witnesses. The man is the leader, the woman must obey. A Jehovah's Witness man can't put himself in a woman's shoes and can't understand her, or he has to try very hard to do so and go against the grain of what is taught in Watchtower publication. And in the case of the attempted rape of Claire and the reaction of the elders when they learned of the story, Jeremy defends the organization and the elders, even though he makes it clear that he would never have acted in the same way. There is no questioning. and this is obvious in the congregations where the elders can act with impunity. You have to wait for Jehovah to put things in order, which may never happen, and there are entire congregations that are subject to the dictatorships of a group of men.
Yet as the story continues, Jeremy grows in the reader's heart as a very tender man who loves Claire dearly. We come to love Jeremy as Claire does, I would say. There is a contradiction there that it would seem a reader who has not ever been a JW might not initially understand, but it does resolve later on. But besides Claire's tragic story, there are a number of other characters that also suffer from the cruelty that comes from some of the religion's rules and procedures.
Yes. Without giving away the story, their Claire Childers' friend Isabel, who will have to go through a cruel ordeal, having made a life choice that goes against the recommendations of the Watchtower. Then there's Claire's mother, who is strongly devoted to the organization's principle to the point of excess. Yet she too has been through great tribulations.
Was writing the book cathartic for you?
Without wishing to say that we were resentful of our past in the organization, writing enabled us to evacuate certain negative feelings and also to open our eyes to other aspects to which we have not paid attention for years, because being a Jehovah's Witness is a full-time job between personal study not of the Bible, as we are led to believe, but study of the Watchtower publications. There are the meetings, and it should be remembered that till a few years ago, we had 2 evenings of meetings during the week and one at the weekend for a total of 5 hours. And then there's the preaching. All that doesn't leave much time for reflections, and there was no internet either, so accessing information was virtually impossible.
But we also got to know some wonderful people on the internet who have been in situations sometimes worse than just described in the book. Reading their story wasn't always easy.
Can you provide examples of your older experiences that now made more sense in light of the reality of what you were writing about?
What struck me most was when I described the violence suffered by a young girl at the hands of her father when she was late with her period. Nothing was made up. My parents had made a family with 5 or 6 children, and there was one teenage girl in particular, the older one. One day she confided in my mother that when her period was late, her father accused her of having had sex and being pregnant. He insulted her and punched her in the stomach. I couldn't leave that out of the book. Of course, I'm not saying that this is a common occurrence among the Jehovah's Witnesses, but situations like this can happen.
There is a voice of reason that weaves throughout the book. Tell us about Eloise.
Eloise is a middle-aged woman who reads the Bible but refuses to be affiliated with any religious organizations. For her, any organizations only serve the interest of the few people at its end. She too has had negative experience in her wounds, but her strength of character has seen her truth. They have enabled her to go through life philosophically. She is a great help to Claire, helping her to reason. When Claire returns on certain points, she points out that she is simply repeated word for word phrase learned by heart from publications without trying to analyze them. Unfortunately, Claire doesn't seem to understand this, or at least doesn't want to accept it, and her attitude leads her to distance herself from her best friend.
Eloise is refreshingly different from all of Claire's JW associates, isn't she? She tries to help Claire reason without being overbearing.
She knows full well that there's no point in pushing a Jehovah's Witness into a corner. It only strengthens his convictions. There is an interesting passage in the book which says no amount of talking, no matter how logical, will change a person's mind if he is firmly convinced that he has the truth. He will remain blind and deaf to the evidence. And that's what Eloise wants to avoid doing with Claire.
I have to tell you that when Claire begins to express her misgivings about her therapist, Eleanor, I started to worry that she would discontinue her therapy. I started to think that maybe there will be no happy ending. Although Claire doesn't state so specifically, her thinking that Eleanor was putting ideas in her head and really after the money more than anything else could be traced to her JW upbringing, right?
Claire had to add from her mother that she was seeing a therapist, psychiatrists, psychologists, etc. Are not well regarded. They are not trusted. They open the door to demons. Let's be honest, things have changed a bit over the last few years, but here we're talking about a person, Claire's mom, who knew the witnesses in the 80s. So she brought up her daughter with this mentality, which was common at the time. So it's normal for Claire to have a lack of trust towards Eleanor, thinking that all she cared about is taking advantage of her. Furthermore, in the event of psychological or emotional problem before consulting a specialist, the witness is encouraged to seek help in Watchtower publications. Then, if necessary, he should ask for help from the elders, who will pray with him, perhaps asking someone to study with him. He will also be advised to pray more to seek God's blessing. For if a person has a problem in his life, it is certainly because he is not blessed by Jehovah. Perhaps he has committed a hidden sin, and the elders will try to find out which one. It's a kind of inquisition.
Another thing that is very realistic about the book is the way it ends. It's a very satisfying ending in that Claire has the most difficult things figured out, but it is by no means the end of her story. A lot of healing has to take place, so it is by no means a fairy tale ending.
Baruq didn't want a Walt Disney ending at all. He hates that. Some people asked us if there would be a sequel with Claire's completely recovery, her mother changed and her will. She leaves the Watchtower when she understands her daughter's torments. But she preferred to let everyone come into his one conclusion.
Is the purpose of Remember Sydney to expose the JW organization for revenge, or an effort to change it for the better, or neither?
Revenge? No. I also have good friends who are Jehovah's Witnesses and have had some good times as well as some more difficult ones. But I don't have any personal criticism to make in general, at least nothing that affects me personally. This was the case for certain members of my family, however, who had to confront the elders with accusations that made no sense whatsoever. That things must change. Yes, the place of women of the organization, for example, even if that seems extremely difficult to me. But above all, we hope that the Watchtower's policy on child abuse is reversed, that there are no more predators hiding in congregation without the parents' knowledge, while the Watchtower knows their names but does nothing to denounce them or even discourages the victims from doing so. And it's true that the publication for the elders says that no action will be taken against those who denounce a Jehovah's Witness pedophile, but the reality is quite different. When a situation of this kind arises, before notifying the police, the elders are obliged to call the Bethel's legal department. And what is said orally is very different from what is written in a book. Among the listeners, some witnesses will maybe say that it's not true that the congregation protects the victims, that there is no ostracism toward those who have spoken out, that these are the assertions of apostates. But the thousands of testimonies prove that the opposite is true.
Triggers. We need to discuss that a little. For many listeners, potential triggers may be the biggest single factor in deciding whether or not to read the book. So, how would you address those concerns?
We don't want anyone to be disturbed by reading the book. And if anyone feels that the memories that might make him uncomfortable, then it's best to refrain. But I think we've done a satisfactory job in that respect, avoiding shocking anyone as much as possible. The story is a fiction, which is a change from the books of testimonies already published, and maybe knowing that can ease your feelings or resentment and allow you to take a step back. There's a dash of humor. It's not just an endless list of clear words. There's a real story here, a story of love as well as friendship. It's also a book of hope. Whatever your trial, you can get through them. We just have to want to. It's always easier said than done, but we also have to look for people who can help us. Make the right friends and separate ourselves from those who are spoiling our lives. We can get in touch with groups on social networks and consult specialists who can help us. There are also a number of associations that can help us. You can search on the internet or ask in a group like parodied ex-Jehovah's Witness, for example.
How would a reader get a copy of Remember Sydney in French or English?
On the website, made available to us. Remember.arbritannia.eu for the English and Souviens-Toi.arbritannia.eu for the French version.
I should point out that Harpitania is spelled Harpitania. Also, for those who are afraid to leave their address, the addresses are collected by a separate company. The book is sent in a neutral envelope, but if you don't want to receive it at your address, you can give the address of your workplace, a neighbor, a friend, a shopkeeper, etc. This is what many people have done when they live with a Jehovah's Witness relative.
Are there plans to make it available as an ebook or an audio book in either or both languages?
No ebook for the moment. Priority is given to the paper book. I also want to say that for the moment we are taking orders so that we can print the book this summer. The sooner we get orders in, the sooner the books can go to press, and the shorter the wait will be. As far as other languages are concerned, a translation into Italian is already underway. If anyone feels able to translate into another language, we are open to discussion. I'd be interested in Spanish, for example.
Eneeh and Baruq, merci beaucoup for spending time with us and for making this wonderful and important book available.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you very much, Gary. It was a pleasure to be in your company.
Well, we hope you enjoyed this first edition of hopefully an ongoing series of interviews with authors that were perhaps one-time Jehovah's Witnesses, or perhaps members of some other high control group, or just has some sort of affiliation or interest, perhaps professional interest in helping people that are recovering from a high control group experience. If you are such an author, maybe it's your first time, or maybe you've done it quite a lot, and you'd like to participate in an interview, please drop me a line and we'll consider your work as for a possible interview. Obviously you need to provide a copy of the book for us, and I can't promise that I can buy your books, because I've got a lot already that want me to read their book, and I don't have a budget to buy all those books. So it just makes sense. And I know this as a DJ that used to work in FM radio, that it only makes sense for artists to send CDs and MP3s to the radio station and DJs, because they're going to expose their music, and it's going to be more than worth whatever it costs to send a CD. So the same thing with the book. It could be in PDF form or whatever's best for you. We don't want it to be you have to spend a lot in shipping costs and things like that. So whatever's good for you. But let us know, and I'll tell you how to contact me. Probably the best way for both of us is to send me a message through Facebook Messenger, because you could do it by replying in the comments to this post or on the video wherever it was posted, but then you're not, then you're kind of giving away your anonymity. So if you might not want to do that, but so either way, but we'll take it either way. But hopefully through Messenger is probably the best way. Just give me your contact information, whatever information you need to tell me, the name of your book, and maybe a little bit about what it's about, and we'll take it from there. So thank you again, and we look forward to more interviews in this continuing series.